I don't know what how to introduce him. I guess I'm going to say famous, infamous, whatever you want to use it. I'm the same way. So I love controversial figures. I'm one. So I can't thank him enough for hopping on with us. And it's the legendary Tim Donaghy joins the show. Tim, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, welcome.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Man, I can't thank you enough, man. Wait, how do you prefer people introduce you? Like I'm in your boat, so that people hate me for whatever I did. I'm like, fuck it, call me infamous. I'm fine with it.
I think going to be honest, infamous is probably the term we should definitely use. Famous, who's famous for doing something wrong? Not too many people, but definitely.
No doubt. Hey, man, I appreciate you joining us. Hey, I want to ask you right out the gate. I've been bashing the NBA for a while. It's hard to watch now. I loved your era much better, but I'm asking Smitty. I'm like 3 blowouts in out here on the West. Last night was finally a decent game between the Wolves and the OKC Thunder. 3 blowouts prior to that. We've been watching blowout after blowout. I think I saw a stat line that it was the most blowouts, 25 points or more in NBA history throughout these certain playoffs so far. And I'm like, what is the biggest deal? Is it just because of the 3-point shot? You either shoot them, make them, or miss them, and then the game's over? Is it the Euro infestation of Euro ball coming over and making 7-footers shoot threes, or the Steph Curry factor? What's the biggest takeaway? Or instant replay every 5 minutes for a fucking common foul? I don't know. What do you think the biggest difference is? What do you see?
I think it's definitely a 3-point shot. When a team can get hot from behind that 3-point line, they can pull away from a team rather quickly. So I think we're seeing that a lot. The teams that are shooting well from behind a 3-point line are the ones that are definitely doing a little bit better in the playoffs.
Let me ask you this, man, kind of staying on just kind of the landscape of today's game in comparison to when you were refereeing. Flopping is at an all-time high right now, and it wasn't something that happened out a lot during your era. Just, I guess, from your landscape, from your view, excuse me, how, I guess, difficult is it for today's referees to be able to just, I guess, be able to see when it is a flop versus when it's a real foul? Because some of these guys are getting really good at just their timing of when to launch back and when to fall, and there's some cases where it does get kind of complicated for the ref.
It definitely does, but the better referees and the ones that usually get the plays right are the guys that watch a lot of film, and they'll study these players and they'll know which player is really acting on a continuous basis and what player is really embarrassing the referees getting those calls that they shouldn't get. So really the officials that watch a lot of film, study, the team that they're officiating that night, knowing the players and their personalities on those, teams that night that they're going out to officiate, will help them, because the NBA moves at such a quick pace that it's a lot of memory recall when it comes to who's on that floor and, what has happened in the past with those officials and those players.
No doubt. Let me ask you this, Tim, real quick. Like in this world now that we live in this NBA, is it ever going to get back to, I don't know, like the old era of physicality? Are we ever going to see that, or is this over? I mean, I've seen so many people talk. I've been on shows, with Matt Barnes and these other guys that talk about the Euro, how they play. They play once a week, but they practice fundamentals all week long, compared to here now where it's AAU and it's just play games. We don't teach shit anymore. And now we got these freak athletes out here just basically getting destroyed by fundamentals still at the end of the day. The Tim Duncans of the world now are the ones that are dominating in a league that's now catered to Euros. Are we ever going to get it back, or no? Is it done?
No, I think it's definitely done, because if you look at it, the league is always making adjustments so that they have a free-flowing, high-scoring game, because that's what the fans want. That's what's good for TV. So they're always putting in different rules so that there's a free-flowing game, and there's a high-scoring game, and all those tough defenders, the Raja Bells of the past Ron Artest are never going to be able to compete in the league, because that physicality, they don't want anything to do with it, and they'll foul them out of the game quicker than they can, blink an eye. So that physicality is something that they don't want. It goes back to those Pat Riley, New York Knicks days when those playoff games were in the 80s, and that's just something that they didn't want, and I don't think you'll ever see that again.
No, 100%, man. And I kind of want to dive back into, to you and, your story a little bit here and your career as well. And obviously, like you said, I mean, you've been open and honest about your story. You even started off this segment here saying, hey, you shouldn't be called famous when you do something wrong. I just want to, for those who don't know, the new viewers in here, the listeners, you kind of give us like a 10,000 square foot view of just your kind of your story and kind of, what all happened as far as how you got involved.
Basically I was, an NBA referee making great money, joined a couple country clubs and really got into golfing and betting big money playing golf. And after the golf matches were over, playing big money card games in the locker room or even getting in a limo and running down to Atlantic City and gambling for, 15 hours straight playing blackjack. And, got to the point where I was hanging around a lot of people that were in the gambling world. And one of the guys just said to me one day, hey, here's the lines on the games. Who you think's going to win? And I had just come from home and I knew who was refereeing those games and, who was going to be put in an advantage or a disadvantage based on relationships with the officials. And I rattled off 3 games for him and, they all won. And he called me up the next day and, was shocked at how easy it was for me to pick winners like I did. Yeah. And we had started betting on, college football, pro football, baseball, and it just started spilling into me giving him tips on NBA games and then NBA games that I officiated if I was in a meeting and I knew certain things were going to go on that night. And, once we stopped doing it because I felt, uncomfortable doing it, what I didn't know is he was passing that information over to people that were associated with organized crime and they were betting millions of dollars on these games. And one time I was in Philadelphia and, a high school friend invited me to dinner and with him was another guy that we went to high school with and he was involved in organized crime. And he basically told me that he wanted to continue to get those picks that he was getting in the past. And if not, he was going to expose me to the NBA or worse yet, have somebody visit my wife or kids in Florida. So, I continued to give them the picks, hoping at the end of the basketball season that it was all going to be over with. And, I was going to go about my life and never do it again. But it was discovered over a Gambino wiretap. And, unfortunately, I ended up doing 15 months in the federal prison because of it.
Damn, that's I can't thank you enough for sharing it. I got to ask you, like, I got my own past. We all do. I don't judge anybody because I'm fucking judged just like everybody else. But I'm curious to know, like, Wolf of Wall Street and all these big movies that have taken guys that have done certain things, Catch Me If You Can type of guys who later on the feds or whoever come back to and say, hey, you did this at all time. You were the best at it. We want to use you now. And I've read stories and stuff. Did the NBA come back to you to say, hey, we want to know how to catch this or before it gets started?
Yeah, it's funny because, I felt so horrible about what I got involved in and what I did. My attorney, John Lauro, called up the NBA legal counsel and said, Tim would like to meet with you and, discuss what he did and how he did it. And they wanted absolutely nothing to do with me. Their goal was to paint me as a black sheep and one bad apple and nobody else had anything to do with it. And, I was a guy that, shouldn't be listened to and wasn't going to tell the truth and anything they could do to just paint me as a liar and somebody that wasn't going to tell the truth. But I was very fortunate in the fact that Phil Scala, who was a supervisory special agent for the Gambino crime family, backed me and said that they investigated everything that I did and I told the truth at every turn and actually wrote the foreword for my book, Personal Foul, which was something that really saved me because every interview, everybody would say to me, why should we believe you? Look what you did. And I would say, hey, I couldn't agree with you more. But the bottom line is Phil Scala wrote the foreword for my book. He was the lead investigator on the case, and he said that I told the truth. So that was something that, really helped me out a lot moving forward after I was out of prison.
Go ahead. Real quick, we share something in common. We both have a Netflix series, and it depicted us in a manner, myself at least. I guess I know how edited it was. I was 2 seasons, 18 episodes. And I knew they filmed me for 5,000 hours. They showed basically 16 hours on a show. How close was that Netflix depiction of you, and how how much I guess, was it accurate or off?
That's what's so fucked up about, some of these people. They promise you, they're going to, have this shine and show the truth. And then the thing comes out and it's nothing like they said it was going to be. For the most part, a little bit of it was good, but, it was just kind of really unfortunate the way they did it. I'll give you an example. Greg Andres, who was the head of the Eastern District of New York at the time of my case and oversaw everything. As soon as I went to jail, 2 months after the fact, he took a left and took a job as at a law firm taking on all the outside legal counsel work for the NBA. So, tell me how that is, something that doesn't, make the news or is exposed or is talked about. And, if they filmed me for hours talking about that, investigated it, found out that it was the truth, and yet that doesn't make it into the Netflix show. I found that to be, awful, because here this guy goes from probably making $250,000 a year to well over $1 million, and, was asshole buddies with David Stern through the whole investigation, listening to everything he wanted, done, and then had his guy stand up there at my sentencing and say that my allegations just didn't hold water, which was the biggest bunch of bullshit. And that's why all the FBI agents were furious that, they did that to me, and they ended up supporting me.
Wow. Man. I got a question. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people they know the story, they know the what happened to you, right, and why you're not in the league. But I haven't really heard of how did this impact you in your life though? Like after you spent 15 months, away, you get out. Obviously, your career, as a ref, at least on a professional level, is away. How has that situation just impacted you as a man?
Yeah, definitely mentally, it's awful. You're in a federal prison. Everyone basically is considering you a rat, and doesn't want too much to do with you. And then you start to think, I'm a father of 4 daughters. How am I going to support my 4 kids? And I had a little bit of money left over, but I got hit with a $225,000 restitution bill that I had to end up paying back. So it was very difficult, but I got very lucky in that, I ended up buying properties at auction back in 2008 and 2009 when nobody wanted them. Yeah. And, I took a chance, and, I wasn't going to buy that first property, and I'm sitting in a house and it's worth $50,000. And, the realtor says to me, if you don't buy this today, I'm buying it tomorrow. And on your way out, lock the door. And I'm literally sitting on this floor, tears coming down my eyes, just saying to God, I need a sign. Should I do this? What am I going to do with my life? And all of a sudden there's a knock on the door, and it's this lady. And she said, "Hey, I saw the cars in the driveway. I'm just wondering, is this house for rent?" And I just felt like that was my sign from God. I said, it will be in about 2 weeks. I bought that house and kept buying houses at auction for the next 2 years. And, I've been very fortunate that I was able to rebuild my life through real estate.
Damn. Smart man, Smitty. 08 was the crash.
Yeah, the recession.
Out here in California, boy, it was, man, I wish I would have did what you did. Shit. Let me ask you something real quick. What do you got going now? What are you doing now? Is because I want to bring it full circle, because the Netflix thing you just mentioned and how they edited that shit. It's funny, if you never got caught, let's just say, and then you came out with this story, nobody would fucking believe you. They'd so you don't get to make money on it. Same with me. I did this show and everybody's like, "Oh, this guy's an asshole, cussing at a white dude, cussing out black kids and blah, 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 blah." Even though I'm from Compton and nobody knew my story, they would never have believed my story. I'd be a racist and all this other shit. Isn't it funny how that shit works? You could now write a book or tell your story because nobody would have fucking believed you. And the same with my end. It's funny how that shit works. You had to go spend 15 months and do all this shit. But isn't that funny how they depict us and make billions of dollars off our name, by the way? And people don't want to talk about that. But isn't it funny how that shit works? No one would have believed you if you would have came out and told the story.
No, definitely not. It's something that, has been extremely difficult, that I was able to, through the help of, great family, weather the storm, so to speak. So I'm lucky I came out on the other side where, I see a lot of people that were in that federal prison system aren't able to do it because they don't have the resources that I had and the story that I had and the strength to kind of fight through it with a lot of family and friends. So, I couldn't be more grateful that I got a second chance and I was able to take advantage of it. But, a lot of people aren't able to, weather that storm. And it's extremely difficult that we have a federal prison system that really isn't in place to help, people get out and rehabilitate their life. It's once you're in that system, it's tough to get out of it. And that's why people always end up reoffending.
Yeah, no, for sure. I want to ask you about an old friend of yours who I know at one point in time you guys were pretty close. Scott Foster, another referee there, and I know you talked about it. I think it was in the New York Times. I saw you were saying how you kind of regretted your falling out with him. Have you guys been able to talk at all in recent times, or has it still been since all this went down, since the last time you guys were able to speak to each other?
No, the last time I spoke with him, I remember calling him up, telling him we were supposed to play in a golf tournament. And, I had a bad back because it was in the middle of the investigation and it didn't hit the news yet. I haven't been able to speak to him. I think that as long as he's officiating in the NBA, it's going to be difficult to, contact him maybe one day when he's retired and everything's over. I would speak to him and let him know that, I'm sorry that his name kind of got drugged through the mud being associated with me. We were thick as thieves, best friends, did a lot of golfing and different things together. But as far as him crossing that line and being involved in what I was involved with, it just didn't happen. And, it appears that, he was involved because of all the phone calls that went back and forth between us. But, the bottom line is he just wasn't.
Gotcha.
Wow. It's crazy, right? They always associate someone and automatically think it's them. We all have our fucked up, but it's crazy. Let me ask you this: you got a history, and there's a famous player that obviously thought he had beef with you, Rasheed Wallace, right? And we had a guest on before, and he was like talking about the number of technical fouls and ejections, and he had that confrontation with you that's out there online and stuff like that. Where did that stem from?
No, it's just a situation where there was a game that I was officiating in, and they were winning by a lot of points, and he took the basketball after a foul was called on him, threw it at the other official when he wasn't looking, and basically hit him in his ass with it. And, I issued him a technical foul, which he didn't like, and he ended up, I think, having 30-some points. They won by 20, and he was so pissed off that I gave him that technical foul that he waited for me out in the parking lot and hid basically behind a pole. And when I walked out, he said to me that he was going to, get that bullshit money back for that technical foul I called on him. And I said something along the lines of, fuck you, you deserved it, which was probably not the smartest thing to say to a 7-foot guy that probably could, knock me down in 2 seconds. And next thing you knew, we squared up and we were trying to get at each other and fight. And Brevin Knight, lucky that I am, Brevin Knight was there and he kind of held him back. So it was just a situation where, I let the Philly in me and he had let the Philly in him get out. And, we always kind of banged heads out on the floor. And, I write about this in the book, how, we would bet $25 in the locker room to see who was going to be the first one to give him a technical foul. So there were a lot of different things that we did and had fun with, before we went out on the floor.
Damn.
God,
nice. So before you get out of here, I want to know, and I saw Smitty ask a question.
Yeah.
Is sports, professional sports, NBA, and NFL, Major League Baseball, is there some sort of rigging going on in your estimation? Just in your estimation, do you think there's something going on because of the DraftKings, FanDuel, all the money that is now in betting? I find it very hypocritical, I guess, that these these organizations or these big time conglomerates put betting on their name. NFL is DraftKings, I believe. NBA's FanDuel. Everyone's using it, but then they'll suspend a player for betting. $15 on a game for a whole season. I find it hypocritical, but this is the world we're in. Do you think there's something that's kind of shady in this whole thing by players or coaches or refs?
I think that, when I was there, that the league would come in, and if a team was up 2-0 or 3-0 in a series, they put the referees in a locker room and they'd show us 15 or 20 plays that they wanted us to concentrate on that night in the game. And those plays always went for the team that was down in the series and against the team that was up. So that's how they would manipulate the series. So the games would go from 3-0 to 3-1, 3-2. So it'd be a 6-7 game series. I write about this. And in Houston, Jeff Van Gundy came out and said that he was told by a league official that, the referees were going to go out and crack down on certain calls in the game that night on Yao Ming. And they went out and did. And I think that they were up 2-0 in the series. Next thing you know, it was 2-2 and it was a 7-game series. So it's something that the league comes down and programs and trains the referees in these morning meetings of certain things that they really want you to concentrate on in a given night. And it goes for the team that's down in the series and against the team that's up.
Now, obviously, you reffed a ton of games, during your career and, during this time. Is there like a certain game that stands out where, like, you looking back, you like, man, I legit lost that team that game because of some calls that I made, during the situation? Is there anything that just stands out where you're like, damn, like that will, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was
for sure. I think, there's just situations where the information that I passed along to the guys making the bets was just information where, we would crack down on certain things that the league wanted us to crack down on, and it was done as a group. But, I remember when Allen Iverson threatened Steve Javie and the league only fined him $25,000 and didn't suspend him. And, I had one of the next games with him in Denver. And, we got in the locker room and said, we're going to call palming violations and traveling violations on him. And that was never called. So we went out there and we all took turns doing it. And I'll never forget, during the end of the game, he came up to me and said, "Hey, Tim, how long is this going to last for?" And he was kind of laughing. And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he goes, "You know what I'm talking about." And I definitely knew what he was talking about, but I didn't want to tell him, we sat out, to stick it up his ass because the league didn't suspend him when we felt as a group of officials that, he should have been suspended for threatening one of our own. So, that's a situation where, the three officials definitely went out and, went to stick it to him. And, it's something that, went on many different nights.
I got two things for you. I can't thank you enough for being so transparent.
Thank you. This is
it's unbelievable.
I'm learning.
Let me ask you real quick. In the day and age of this, these individual prop bets on FanDuel and DraftKings, you can bet players and you can get DFS and all this. How hard would it be to make sure a player got his allotted whatever points for certain bettors? Like, is that a thing? Because I've heard this in Vegas from some big time gamblers. Like, it's funny because we got Draymond Green on a soundbite 2 weeks ago in the playoffs who were like telling the ref, "Hey man, it's 5.5, huh?" And like it's funny. Would it be impossible to like get a guy to say, you know what, he's at 40 draft points, he can get 41, and this guy wins this money? Is there any of that you think going on?
I'm not there now to say. I would, venture to guess there is. I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And I'll give you an example. Back in the day, I had a game in Philadelphia with George Karl. I think he was coaching the Milwaukee Bucks at the time. Mm-hmm. And it was a tie game, and we were in overtime, and he was such an asshole. I couldn't give him a technical foul, but we got in the locker room, after the fact. And I told a group supervisor and the other two referees, I have him in Indiana in 2 weeks, and I'm going to throw his fucking ass out of the game the minute he fucking looks at me. And I ended up throwing him out of the game in the first quarter. And, he was furious, but it was something that I said I was going to do to, the two other refs. And I probably told half my buddies I was going to do it too. And if they would have took that information and bet against them at the time, they could have made a lot of money. So,
macro, Smitty, macro.
Because I'm mad because the line would have been crazy. To assume a coach getting kicked out, like the line would have been amazing if you got that right. So,
you could probably, add 4, 5, or 6 points, to a line either way. If a coach is going to get kicked out or that has happened with players too. Mike Mathis had a war going on with Charles Barkley, and if you knew every time Mathis was going to ref one of Charles Barkley's games, that would change the spread 4 or 5 points because he didn't allow Charles Barkley to back his defender down and push off. He would call offensive fouls on him. So a lot of things that happened, relationship-wise, both positive and negative, that affected, how the game was called. So, even
your guy Scott Foster and I think Chris Paul, we've known that.
Yeah,
for
another
a while.
prime example. Yeah, another prime example.
They don't like each other.
Relationships both positive and negative that spill out onto the floor and affect how the game is officiated because the officials officiate the names on the front and the back of the jerseys rather than the rules as they're written in the rule book.
Emotions matter. Like, we're humans, JB. Like, we can say we won't. We're human. No, you're a grown ass man too. When you go out there and you're refereeing, so you feel like a player's disrespecting you or often disrespectful, it's going to play a role.
No doubt. So, hey, Smitty, I got one question for him. I don't know if you do, but I just wanted to. The chat had a question for you, Tim. What did you do to become an NBA ref? Is one of the chat questions. Okay. As far as, I guess, your path traveled, or did you grow up wanting to be a ref? Did you play and then say I wanted to ref like a lot of people do, or what got you into it?
I was from the Philadelphia area where we had a lot of NBA referees in Crawford, Strom, Javi, Washington, Wonderlic, Callahan, and Billy Oakes, and my dad was a top college basketball referee, so it was in our area and in my blood. So I graduated from Villanova. I didn't like any job that I had. I enjoyed sports. I started officiating, sent a letter up to the NBA office and was invited out to a camp. And at that time, they were looking for young, officials that were in good shape. And I was in good shape at that time. And, I got into the training program and I was one of the youngest ones ever hired at age 26 to make it to the NBA. So it was just a situation where I was at the right place at the right time.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story, man. For anybody who wants to be a ref, man. There is a journey there. So I got one final question. I know everybody in the chat wants to know. I'm a Lakers fan. JB's a Lakers fan. So we got to ask you, Game 6, Western Conference Finals, Kings Lakers. Were the Kings robbed in that game, in that series?
100%. I think if you look at the calls that were made, in that game, you can see that they totally screwed over the Kings. It was a situation where Dick Bavetta was on the game. He was, nicknamed himself, the NBA's go-to guy because he was put on Game 6s to force a Game 7 because that was what was going to get the league global attention. So he figured, hey, I'll get the Lakers this win. We force a Game 7. It goes back to Sacramento. Sacramento is never going to lose on their home floor. So I'm really not doing anything wrong. And, that's what happened. And they got upset on their home floor. They're clearly the best team in the league that year, should have a ring on their finger. And, unfortunately they don't because of the antics of, Dick Bavetta and thinking that he was doing what the league wanted. And he was because, there's a famous interview with David Stern where somebody said to him, what's your ideal matchup in the NBA Finals? And he said the Lakers versus the Lakers. So, we all knew that. And, Bavetta, said he was the NBA's go-to guy and did certain things to, make sure that Game 6s turn into Game 7s.
So are we, for clarity, does this water down the Lakers three-peat? Does this ruin the legacies of Shaq and, rest in peace, my favorite player, Kobe and Phil? Like, this is some exclusive information, JB. Like,
this is clearly something I wrote about it at length in the book Personal Foul. It's in there, black and white. It was investigated by the FBI, and Sacramento, without a doubt, was the best team in the league that year. And they would have. I think it was New Jersey that ended up coming out of the East. They would have probably beat New Jersey in 4 games that year, and the Lakers went on to get another championship.
Damn.
My last day, man, I can't believe.
I wish I didn't hear that as a Kobe fan, Lakers fan. I wish I didn't hear that.
I love it. I love the real.
I love it. I'm just, I'm like, damn.
I got to get your take on Pete Rose.
Oh shit.
What is your take now that he's passed away and they allow him in 27 to be back in the voting process of being into the hall? How do you equate what he did in the game as a player, coach, manager, whatever, betting on himself or his own team versus what you did? Is there like a difference? Do you look at him differently or the same? Should he have been in the hall?
I don't look at it differently. I think we both made, drastic errors, lapse of judgment, cross the line we shouldn't have been near. And, and totally fucked up our lives. So, you know, what he did though, when he was a player, you know, I think should be something that should be recognized, and I'm glad that hopefully he'll be put into the Hall of Fame, because, you know, who am I to judge anybody? You know, I'm all about forgiveness myself. So he made a mistake, and, you know, hopefully he recognized that mistake at length before, you know, he passed away, and hopefully he's going to get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Nah, no doubt, man. No doubt. Make sure you guys go purchase the book right now, Personal Foul. Tim Donaghy's story, man. Go check it out. And Tim, I hope everything's well. I hope you're doing well. I hope everything, the family, the daughters, and everything else, man. Hopefully the best comes to you. And like I said, I can't thank you enough for the transparency. And you know, I did a show called Last Chance U. So obviously I gave a lot of kids a lot of extra chances. So I do believe in second one, third ones, etc. So hopefully this thing ends up being a great story at the end of the day.
Hopefully I'm not going to need a third one. I'm happy with the second one.
There you go.
Doubt. Hey, I can't thank you enough, man. You've been one of my favorite guests ever, man. So I appreciate you, brother, and good luck. Hopefully we can have you on again maybe at the end of the season.
Absolutely, buddy. I appreciate your help. Thank you, sir.
Thank